Chair Edens, we are now being recorded on the cloud and on YouTube.
Excellent. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is Tuesday, February 22nd at 6 p.m. Ms. Patrick, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Chair Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Galani,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxie,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon, Councilmember Ottenberg.
Here.
Thank you. Can I get a motion on the floor to approve the minutes? Made by Councilmember Flasher, seconded by Councilmember Ottenberg. Do we have any corrections to the minutes? The only thing I saw, and that's just really nitpicky, is under the previous approval, it looks like we've got an underscore between the word motion and passed, and we can get rid of that and just put a period after the word passed. Okay. Are the makers of the motion okay with that correction being rolled into the motion? Okay. Seeing no disagreement, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Thank
Abstain.
you. Any members of the public that would like to comment? Please indicate so now. Okay, we've got Councilmember Dodwell who is going to comment as a member of the public.
As a resident and a prior business owner here in Wildwood, I'd like to know what Wildwood's stance is, or what steps you're going through in order to get a new economic development manager on board. We've been working without someone for about 6.5 months now. I'm seeing unused retail locations. I'm seeing the inability, rightfully so, for staff to be able to go out and perhaps draw in new business because it is somewhat a full-time job. And I've heard from businesses throughout the area, because I do go around and talk to business owners when I have the opportunity or see them in their business specifically. And they're saying that the daytime traffic is really low. So that's an issue that we need to, as a city, I think, address head on. And I personally just don't see any way we can do that without having a full-time individual dedicated to doing the things we need to do in order to get the appropriate amount. I'm not saying I'm all for retail everywhere throughout the city. I am very much for having the business traffic during the daytime. So we need to get some professionals into some of the empty space that we have in town center. We also need to look at how we can better commingle some of those activities that individual business people are doing already. So I guess I just want to find out what the committee is going to do going forward in order to get a replacement in for Julian Jacquin. And that when we get that replacement in, that we as a committee and as the city administrator set some specific goals for that individual to go after, so that they're not pulled into assisting with audiovisual activities and things of that sort. I want to make sure that we have an individual that is really committed to helping Wildwood strengthen its tax base and strengthen its business base for the existing businesses and also for new businesses. So that's all I wanted to say. I just want to get this committee moving forward on that, and would like to have a subcommittee of this committee do the interviewing process along with the city administrator for a replacement for Julian.
Thank you for your comments. We can maybe address some of those under other business news and updates. We can maybe Mr. Cross can give an update. Do we have any other members of the public that would like to comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close out of public comments. And we have our first item that is for action. And I just want to thank the Parks Department for spending their evening with us and for preparing a presentation. So Ms. Robin Keefe is going to be discussing our Main Street Connection potential grant application. So I will turn the floor over to her.
All right. Well, thank you for having me here this evening. It's a pleasure to talk to you all. Again, my name's Robin Keefe. If you haven't met me, I'm a planner and staff liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission. So as you know, Missouri Main Street Connection came to speak to you back in November. And at the time, the Historic Preservation Commission was also invited, and they gave a presentation on their community empowerment grant opportunity. And at the time, it was discussed that staff should attend a grant workshop, the next one, which was this February on the 2nd. And Assistant Director Ripito and I both attended. Ben White, who presented to this committee, also presented to us at the grant workshop, and we were able to follow up with him a few times to discuss potential opportunities here in Wildwood. So tonight, what I'd like to discuss with you all is to highlight once again Main Street's approach to community revitalization, identify a potential opportunity we have here in Wildwood for their services, and then talk about potential next steps should we choose to move forward on pursuing this grant opportunity that is before us. So with that, I am going to bring up my presentation. And I'm first going to try it using PowerPoint. So typically I put this in a PDF. Oh, there we go. Does everybody see my full screen PowerPoint? Excellent. All right, so this evening, as you can tell from the title of my presentation, we will be discussing proposed revitalization strategies around the City of Wildwood's original Route 66 corridor in connection with Missouri Main Street. So what is Main Street? Well, Main Street is actually, Missouri Main Street is actually affiliated with the National Main Street Center, which was originally a program of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So Main Street has been around for over 40 years. It was established in 1980, and now it's its own subsidiary. So it's got quite the reputation, and it's worked with over 2,000 communities nationwide on using its model. And what its model is revitalizing, or methodology rather, is to revitalize our older traditional districts in our communities. So they use the word downtown a lot. And in Wildwood, that's confusing because we're a newer community and we have a newer downtown. But we do have a traditional commercial district, which we'll get to later in the presentation. Main Street has a network. It's a leader, both statewide and nationally. So they have a network of professionals, programs, organizations that work with communities and revitalization projects. And they have a brand that is well known. And basically,
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm not sure if you still need to be on the same slide or if it's just not changing for us, but we're still on the first slide.
Are you on proposed Route 66?
Yeah, the first slide.
And we are not seeing the full presentation view. We're seeing the view with the additional slides on the left.
Okay, this is why we tend to Okay. All right, I am just going to bring up my PDF presentation at this point. So if you'll bear with me. Okay, so everyone should now see my PDF. Is that correct? All right, perfect. All right. So, so again, Missouri Main Street is under that that national umbrella, and their focus is preservation-based economic development. So it's really about historic preservation and economic development through that. And they've been very successful. If you look at their numbers, they're actually pretty profound. There's been about $1 billion invested, both public and private investment, since 2006. And this is 2006 through 2020 statistics. They have around 900 net new businesses created in Missouri through their revitalization efforts, around 4,500 new jobs, and around 500,000 volunteer hours spent on revitalizing downtowns. And nationally, they have even larger numbers. So we're looking at $90 billion reinvested in these traditional downtown centers, 300,000 buildings rehabilitated, a gain of almost 700,000 new jobs, and 150,000 businesses. So they have results. Their roadmap, again, is historic preservation. They're achieving commercial development and economic development through that tool. Main Street, and just to stop and give credit where credit is due, we did take some of these slides from Missouri Main Street, so thank you, Ben White. And if I stumble, it's because he was not here with us this evening. He's at another town hall. But Main Street is all inclusive. It basically involves every sector of the community in these efforts. And generally it has a ripple effect. Like, the philosophy is, if you invest heavily in these traditional historic districts that give the community its sense of identity and character, that community development across the board will drive from that. Main Street is focused on a newer model of economic development. They're focused on public-private partnerships, attracting to the community what we want, not just anything that will come to Wildwood, but the specific types of businesses that we want to see in Wildwood. They're looking at high value positioning. So how can we create a valuable downtown district or a valuable commercial district, not just anything that comes along. We're looking at bringing in skilled talent. We're focusing on our assets. We're looking at quality of life in conjunction with our economic development. Basically, if we have active spaces and quality places, people will come. And it's driven by an overall vision and education of that vision. This is what we have to offer. And they achieve this through a 4-point approach. There's the economic vitality of a district. That's bringing in a diverse economic base, having a strong entrepreneurship system, smart new investment. There's a focus on the place, accessible, people-centered. Again, the focus on historic preservation and that community character, and then just creating a place that people want to be in. Then there's promoting all those assets that we have as a community and really telling our story. Who are we? What are we about? And what makes us different and attractive to people who want to specifically come here? And then that supports that buy local experience, because that's how we get the unique. And then this is all achieved by organization, strong community partnerships across the board. So we're not just looking at one entity taking the lead, but we're all working together as a community to achieve that common vision. And so Main Street achieves this. So basically they're saying that all of these components need to come together in a comprehensive way, that everybody has their role, but we need to work together towards this common vision. And we'll go into specific elements of that later in the presentation. So who benefits from a strong downtown? Well, Main Street says everybody should be engaged for a strong downtown or commercial district. Property owners, local residents, retail business owners, corporations, government, preservationists. I would also include schools and institutions, everybody. And so how do we think we can achieve this in Wildwood? Well, I'll give you a hint by stopping my share.
Let's just get right to it. Y'all ready to boogie woogie down Route 66? Well, if you ever plan to motor west, take my way, that's the highway that is the best. Get your kicks out on Route 66. Tell me, Jason.
Lord, it winds from Chicago to LA, more than 2,000 miles along the way. Get your kicks out on Route 66.
Rhymes through St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri, Oklahoma City, it sure looks pretty. You should see Amarillo, Gallup, New Mexico, Flagstaff, Arizona, darling, don't forget Winona, Kingman, Barstow, San Bernardino.
Once you get hip to this kind of tip, when you take that California trip, oh baby, you can get your fix on Route 66.
All right. So going back to my presentation. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. So as you might have guessed, what we would like to focus on, or what we'd like to propose, is that we focus on our heritage, our commercial heritage in Wildwood, and that is actually our historic Grover communities and our historic Pond community, and our original Route 66 segment through Wildwood, known today as Manchester or Old Manchester. So our original segment of Route 66 was aligned with the whole route in 1926 to 1932. Route 66 was our major connection to the West, and it gave birth to many of our small towns across the nation, and also our mom and pop stores and other roadside attractions that we now recognize today. The department put out this postcard for Celebrate Wildwood in 2021. And this was to promote our future Route 66 roadside park project. But here you can see that we really played off the idea of the Route 66 roadside attractions And we made sure to highlight Wildwood on that route, including Big Chief Roadhouse, which is on our historic National Register of Historic Places. It's affectionately known as the Main Street of America. So Wildwood actually has quite a bit of history along that segment. We have a number of buildings that are on either the Wildwood Historic Register or the National Historic Register. And that includes Big Chief and Old Pond School. And if you look at our Wildwood Town Center map, we have our new town center over here, our traditional Main Street. But then we have our Route 66 corridor all alongside it. And if you walked in a loop, which I've done on quite a few lunches since I started at the city, and you went from the circle at Taylor Road down Main Street, up Crestview Lane to Etherton, and then over to Manchester, and did that whole loop, you're looking at a 1.5 mile route there. So it's very walkable, and we can certainly work on increasing our connections to that area. But if you go further up, we have Big Chief Roadhouse, we have Old Pond School, and we just have a number of older businesses with a lot of character along the strip. And then if you come down to this wedge area here, we actually still have the original Route 66 roadbed on private property over here. The original Route 66 was part of our original master plan for our town center in Wildwood. So you can see that on the town center regulating map. And if I give you a little walking tour, I can give you a taste of some of these older buildings that exist, including what we have here, which is now the porch. Allen Dry Goods, our former City Hall building, and the area that was once known as Funk's Grove. 3 French Hens, Sinclair Garage. And then this gives you an idea of that streetscape that we've been working on for the last decade or so. We've been making improvements along Manchester, including very attractive street lighting, bicycle lanes, sidewalks. So we already have some of the infrastructure in place. And then at Grover Crossing Way is where we intend to have our future park, which would be an interpretive center for the corridor and trailhead facility for Route 66 enthusiasts. And then of course we have Larry's. some of the businesses we all know and love in our community that everybody knows about, even though there's no signage. But for their anniversary celebration, I hear about 400 people came out to Larry's. And then formally in the back in the 70s, we even had St. Louis's first dinner theater. And then what everybody seems to remember, even though it was only in existence for Wildwood for 2 years, is the Bubba and Coy's Southern Style Catfish Restaurant. Now, if we leave historic Grover and travel up the way to Old Pond Old Pond Historic District, we have Big Chief Roadhouse, which was one of the largest motor court facilities on Route 66 back in the day. Babe Ruth and Al Capone have been rumored to have attended the restaurant at various points, and it still continues to be a business, a legacy restaurant for Wildwood to this day. We have Old Pond School, restored in 2001. It's now a meeting facility and park. But again, it gives us that sense of history, that sense of where we came from. And then we have several buildings that are really geared towards the motor trade that now have for sale signs. So there's definitely, there's some opportunity out there right now. And then we already have some kind of haphazard placemaking going on along that space. I found an old wooden bench next to a street post. No sidewalk in sight, but it looked like a nice place to spend some time. Then we have Sebo Furniture Restaurant, or Furniture Restaurant, Sebo Furniture Restoration. We have the Streetscape, Kelly Motors, some very beautifully restored buildings, including the current service station, which was recently rehabilitated and adapted to a power washing business. And in addition to that history, we have some St. Louis Cycling Club history. So this was a very popular cycling route for all the way back into the early 1900s. Cyclists would start at Big Chief and they would cycle all the way to Smith Hill, which used to be Wildwood's Everest. It was located on the Franklin and St. Louis County line. And cyclists would basically come out to Wildwood to conquer that hill. And the Venture Cycling Association has certainly capitalized on the history around Route 66, creating a bicycle route that does in fact go through Wildwood. So we can capitalize on that history. And while Main Street, Missouri Main Street provides services to us in terms of creating a strategy or a roadmap of a revitalization effort, there's actually some grant programs out there that will provide us dollars for preservation of our historic structures and road segments, as well as provide funding for research and planning along the Route 66 corridor. And there's also a national, the Road Ahead partnership that connects all these preservation, economic development, tourism professionals along Route 66 to really promote that corridor and work together in a collaborative way to achieve economic development alongside it. So when we talked to Main Street, we asked them, we were like, well, Wildwood's not quite your usual cup of tea. And what we're proposing in terms of revitalizing our Route 66 corridor is not your traditional downtown Main Street of densely clustered buildings, surrounded by a very pedestrian oriented streetscape like our newer downtown here in Wildwood. We have a lot of vacant land here, and we're talking about a 2-mile stretch. Well, while we believe that this part can certainly be converted to walkable space and be connected with our newer downtown as part of a historic downtown center, we would need to look at some infill strategies along here as well. So we talked to Main Street about that, and they have professionals that can tackle that aspect as well. So what does their model look like when applied to a community and applied to what we're proposing? Again, they're talking about 4 points: economic vitality, design, promotion, organization. And here they gave us a lot of examples of what they've done in other communities that they've worked with. But basically what they're looking at is retention of businesses that are already there. So definitely preserving our legacy businesses and keeping them in place. They're talking about recruitment. So attracting new businesses to the area and telling them what we want. What do we want in that area? Do we want just any business, or do we want a certain kind of business? marketing availability of the spaces that are there. So really packaging it up for prospective owner or leaser. Letting them know this exists, this is the attractive features, these are the numbers, and basically doing their homework for them. So this is an example of that type of business opportunity marketed in Trenton, Missouri. It's telling them what type of demographic information we have as a community. So again, doing their homework. And then telling our story. Once it's all done, once we start attracting new businesses into the area, really making it sound like an inviting proposition to land there. So looking at design, and of course, this is a little bit more my cup of tea, being on more of the planning side. So we're looking at historic preservation, preserving what we do have, our historically significant buildings, and really making them look nice. Beautifying the area, which we've already started to do with some of our streetscape improvements here in Wildwood. Adding public art. So I took some pictures of where I thought would be some great potential locations of where we could partner with a church or with a school to potentially, put some public art here that would go along with the vibe of the corridor. Have some murals in the city. So one thing I was telling our assistant director today is back when I was an undergrad, I went to SIU Carbondale, and every time I went there from out where we are, Google Maps would tell me there's about 4 or 5 different routes to take. And in fact, they didn't highlight the one that I thought was the quickest, which was 64 to 57 South. But more often than not, I would take Route 3 down through Chester. And the reason I would take it through Chester is because Chester was home of Popeye the Sailor Man. So every time I went through Chester, I would fill up my gas tank, and Chester would get some dollars for their community. So I guess my point is murals work, and they market a community, and they make a place special, and they make people want to go through it. So then I started taking a look at Wildwood and what we have. And right as we come to this corner, we have this very large space. And I was thinking, well, what if we had a Route 66 mural on that space? You can see it from multiple directions. Then I was going by Pond Elementary School, and I'm seeing all this blank brick here. I'm like, well, wouldn't that be cool if we had some Route 66 murals on it? So the other thing we can do is really focus on wayfinding. People will go to places that they know about. And we've got some of it in the grand picture of things. We've got our historic Route 66 markers already. But what about when we're down into the more walkable spaces? Are we really marketing our local businesses as we're walking around in historic Grover community? And then focusing on placemaking, making places more whimsical, or giving a reason for people to stop and play in their community space. So examples from Main Street were in Independence, Missouri. They had checkers in their public space, tic-tac-toe, getting people to stop and hang out together and be a part of community. And I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had, I don't know why I keep thinking chessboards along this strip, but just something interactive, a reason to stop. Once you have those things in place, you got to promote it. And how do we do it? Well, image building events like Celebrate Wildwood, for example. I was thinking what would really promote the Route 66 corridor is what if we transformed Wildwood Middle School's parking lot into a drive-in theater, a pop-up drive-in theater. It would embrace that heritage of the corridor. So branding, we already have some of that. And the national organizations are helping us do that for us, basically. And then really selling it once you have it. So really highlighting it. For example, on our, right now we have a points of interest map with the Historic Preservation Commission, and we're talking about doing a redesign this year. And so we'll be talking about the format of that redesign, but we're actually thinking about having more of a roadmap, and we can really highlight the Route 66 corridor on that roadmap. And then, you know, things like postcards, and then promotional material. And then finally, we're talking about organization. So creating partnerships. So how do we get the churches, the schools, the businesses, and everybody working together to really brand this corridor as something special? And that's by getting everybody excited and building partnerships. And the way Main Street tends to do this is by creating kind of a neutral revitalization nonprofit entity. Whether it's housed in one that is already in existence or whether it's a new one, the idea is to get an organization that can really focus on providing the backbone or support to all these partnerships and all these activities for selling the area. And then fundraising, an organization to help do some of the fundraising activities, apply for the grants. You know, some of the, like the drive-in movie theater, that could be a good fundraising activity. And then someone to lead volunteers in making the community special. So in St. Pete, where I previously worked as a city planner, the way we were branding Central, which was basically our Route 66 corridor, like we had our downtown, and then we had our more small business, walkable, funky, unique vibe area. And you know, we had people putting murals on buildings. We had people putting murals on the street and creating, you know, colorful sidewalks. So just bringing people together, bringing the community together, having competitions, having fun with it, and getting people excited can add a lot of vibrancy to a space. So again, their process is basically we start in these 2 years of creating that roadmap and vision. What do we see and how do we get there? And then we really have to sell that understanding to the community. And then that leads to the transformation, going really focusing on those 4 points, and then making sure that all along the way, we're thinking about data collection, storytelling, making sure that we're telling the community our story. So that's something that we should be thinking about all the way through. So finally, to end my presentation, we want to start with a vision for downtown. We want to market understanding for it, or a vision for that corridor rather, market understanding for it, apply our transformation strategies and implement those 4 points. And then we want to measure our impact. And to do that, we can work with Main Street through their community empowerment grant. So with that, before I go into, well, I suppose I'll tell you a little bit more about the grant opportunity and then we can discuss. So again, this is a service grant. So they're providing us 2 years of services. for, which is valued as about $30,000. It's a 60/40 cost share. They come to Wildwood if we were chosen, and they conduct a town hall and stakeholder meeting to discuss the grant and get people involved. They do survey work and data collection along with the city. They do training, strategy identification. They help us develop our strategy. They help us with volunteer management, and then they provide technical services throughout the effort. So it's really more of a partnership. They're not doing everything for us, but we're working with them on our revitalization strategy for the 2 years. And during those 2 years, we're connected to their network. So I have more slides to go in detail about the community empowerment grant, but I am going to stop my presentation now and just thank you all. And if you have any questions for myself or Assistant Director Ripito, we are certainly here to answer them. But for now, I'd just like to throw it out to you to discuss what I presented this evening.
Well, thank you so much. I do know that we're going to have a couple of questions, but first I wanted to make some comments about your really excellent presentation. And so my laptop fan kicked on, so if you can't hear me, just let me know and I'll shout at you guys. Can you hear me okay? Okay. One of the things that you guys did really well, especially Ms. Keefe, is you picked out a unique item in our city that we can capitalize on. And that's harder to do than you think, because when you go to most towns, especially small towns, and you ask that town, whether it's elected officials, staff, community, what are the great things about you, right? They say, we have the best people, we have we have great local businesses, and it's all of these things that may be true, but it's a very generic bullet point list that's usually about 5 things. And so what that means is it's really hard to compete against that. Because everybody has the best people, right? That's what everybody says. We have great local businesses. We have great space, right, that we can capitalize on. And what you guys did really well is you took what Wildwood has that's unique and competitive and can be expanded on. And that was recognizing that Route 66 corridor, which is underutilized right now. And so now, looking at the committee, Katie and I are the only ones that have been on for the last couple of years. And so, 2.5 years ago or so, there was an RFP for some area that the city owns, which is about 30 acres, and looking at what a plan would be like if that was developed as a commercial district. Okay, that's great, but that's not a plan that's appropriate for this area. And so we're talking about something as a city that we haven't tried to really vision out before, that we really do have a need for, that's unique and different from that other area of town center. And we've had plenty of conversations, and we've certainly advocated in the last few years for, sewer lateral extension, especially on as you go towards Pond. I know the businesses have, we've tried to advocate for sidewalks and things like that. So we have identified in the past some things that we know we need to do, we just never got past that. And the other thing is how I want to point out how much this overlapped, especially that last section, Robin, where you talked about how Main Street really does their strategic planning. It overlaps with the update to our strategic plan as a committee and our goals. I hope you all picked up on that, but this is a time where we would be updating that demographic information, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we need to have a conversation as a city about where we want to go, right? So when we look at those statistics and they come in, we can look at not only area trends, but national trends. And there's 2 ways we can go. We can say, okay, what is the fastest growing industry? And do we want to get on that train, right? Which is usually the hospitality and healthcare industry in our area. Or do we want to say that we want to recognize that there is an area that is not normally covered in West St. Louis County, and that's the type of businesses we want to recruit. So that's an option. Or we can look at where we have clusters that are already unique and pre-existing, and that's actually what we did with the Lawn and Garden Summit, right? We recognize we have an unusual amount of really qualified garden centers, and we want to capitalize on that. So we can also do that and pull out other pockets of businesses that we have that are collective that other cities don't, and build on that as well. And so we'll have to kind of have a growing pain conversation about that. But what's exciting is it sounds like if we get the grant, they might actually basically help write that document for us again, which is really good news. So I'm looking for that. And I would also just like to say you're right about the murals. So in the city of Nashville, there is a mural with what looks like angel wings. And because there is an Instagram generation, there is a 30-minute plus wait on the weekend to take a picture with a wall. People drive, they will wait in line, they will stand there, and then eventually they will have to go to the restroom and buy a coffee. And somebody gets business out of that. But I do think areas that are charming, that have something different, right? Because we've got big box stores everywhere. So anything that we can do that is unique, I think is really quite helpful. And I would also like to add that utility boxes also offer a great painting canvas. The city of Manchester does that. So if you drive down Manchester, you'll notice that there's geese on one, sunflowers on another. So that's a pretty good painting area as well. And then I'm so excited that this would concentrate, I'm sorry, I'm almost done, on infill strategy. Because we do need to have a plan for what that would look like and recruit, because there is a way to add to an area, whether it's with housing or businesses, that doesn't diminish but adds to the historic charm of a neighborhood. And there's all kinds of building trends right now, especially in small cities throughout the US, where they're kind of making things that are, you know, retro and industrial chic merged together, if that makes sense. With maybe an exposed beam in this inside and a 1930s looking exterior. So there are ways to do things, but if we have a plan in place and can provide that and advertise for that for development, a whole new world just opened up. And I think that's about it in my notes, but I will ask if another member of staff has anything else to add before I see Councilmember Dodwell has her hand up. And I can already tell you that there's going to be questions on if we are okay as we are with the staff, or if we need to indicate that we are replacing a staff member in economic development. And so there's some questions along that line. If you want to go ahead and answer them now or before the first person with their hand up, that's okay. Hello?
If I may, as far as that's concerned and additional staff and such, we haven't looked that far into it. Right now, we're in the very beginning stages and seeing if we should move further along with that. So that would actually be something that would come along the way.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dodwell, then I've got Councilmember Jaxie and Councilmember Clark.
Well, I just wanted to kind of dovetail into what you had been speaking about, Lauren, in that we do have some unique components here in Wildwood. Just to give you an example, I was at Ted Drew's last fall, and a couple was standing in line with us after we'd made our orders. And they said, "So where are you from?" And I said, "We're from Wildwood." And they said, "Oh, we went through there this morning. We left California and we drove all the way out here to travel Route 66, and we're headed up to Chicago. And we stopped and had lunch in Wildwood after we looked at the locations that you had in Wildwood, so that we could kind of piggyback through the area. And that's a beautiful city. And I mean, they were just lauding us with compliments and everything. And I really think that this gives us a unique feature that none of the other cities in St. Louis County have really grabbed a hold of. We have lots of other cities further east of us, down Manchester and various spots that could utilize something similar, but they've all knocked down buildings, added in newer buildings, pretty much destroyed that old hotel I can't think of that's down almost in city limits, Coral Coral Gables or something like that. They let those things disappear. And I think what we'd like to try to do here in Wildwood is to retain those that are historic, because they do have a meaning to not only the current residents of Wildwood, but past residents and our future residents that we're going to have. The things that, I mean, we've taken our grandkids just around town and shown them where different things were at. And I just feel like this would give us something different that could market to a lot of different types of industries. You've heard me talk at these meetings before about having to get, besides just the retail and the restaurants, we need to get standard white collar, blue collar businesses in here so that they can help with our daytime traffic at all of these restaurants and stores that are selling things. So I think this is a good place to start, and I'm willing to help out in any way you guys need help.
Thank you, Councilmember Togwell. Councilmember Jaxie.
Thanks, Councilmember Edens. And Robin, awesome presentation as usual. Thank you very much for the information. Totally supportive of it. I do have one question / concern as I went through the document that was attached to the agenda, and Councilmember Edens touched on it. I'm trying to find it. I believe it was on page 4, where it talks about what commitment they were looking for from the city. And unfortunately, I'm on my iPad, so I can't pull it up right now. But anyways, it was like the third or fourth bullet in there where it was talking about what commitment they wanted from the city. And it was something along the lines of that we had to commit to paying for a full-time position because we're a city of over 5,000. So my question's I've got a couple of concerns with that. One would be, what are the exact roles of that position? What are we expecting that position to be doing as it relates to this project? And then that kind of dovetails in, and this may be more for you, Steve. How does that overlap with the position that Julian used to fill that I'm still hoping that we will get refilled at some point? Because it does talk about the salary for that position should be commensurate with any economic development positions that the city might have. So it sounds like we as a city, if we go into this, unless I misread the document, which is entirely possible, we're not just committing to the 40%, but we're also committing to a position on the staff, which would equate to a salary of what we used to pay our economic development managers. So there's some more costs there, I think, unless I read it wrong. And so just what's the position going to be doing? And then how would that overlap with whoever eventually fills Julian's position?
So let me first respond with some clarification. So my understanding is that the commitment to hire staff is actually down the line after the 2 years of them helping us to put together this roadmap and strategy. So it's basically saying that we're doing all this upfront work with the intention that down the line, we're really going to invest in what we come up with. And as far as whether that staff person could be potentially, half filled or filled by staff, positions we already have, that would certainly be a question for Main Street as we have conversations with them. But I just want to make it clear that we're not required to hire staff right up front.
And Mr. Jaxie, I was going to speak, but then Robin went ahead there. No, there really is not any requirement to hire staff. Organizations like this cannot dictate to a municipality or a city that they have to hire staff or at a particular salary. We will invest the time with the staff that we have to pull the documentation together, form the, do whatever we need to do, have the town hall meetings to gather the information. Once we get to the end, then we'll see what kind of a product that we have and then how we maintain that product. Now we have a very vigorous planning department in terms of, because depending on where we go with this and what the city as a whole and what the council as a whole decides that they want to do with this for a $12,000 investment over the next 2 years, then we can decide what the ongoing requirements might be just to keep this thing going, which is pretty much kind of what we're doing right now with the revitalization or with the vitalization of certain areas. So I'm glad you asked the question, but at this point, there's no requirement for hiring or anything, or who would be involved in this on an ongoing basis, particularly at the end of the 24-month period.
Okay, so as a follow-up to that, Steve, so I found it while you were talking, I was looking as well, and it says, what makes a community competitive for the grant? And the third bullet says, a commitment by the community to eventually hire staff. So I got you that they can't dictate the terms, but they are, unless their language is wrong or I'm reading it wrong, they are saying if we want to be competitive for the grant, we have to be committed to hiring staff. Now, that said, I mean, Julian's position, and I'm just using his name, that the position that Julian used to fill, it seems to me fits right in with this, right? This is one of what his primary role was, as far as I'm concerned. So ideally, we could highlight that we've already had this type of staff member. We have the intention to hire that staff member again, and hopefully it would count for what it is they're looking for. Bottom line is, I'm supportive. I just don't want us. And you've answered the question. It doesn't sound like we're getting locked into hiring a second overlapping position or anything like that. So thank you.
Well, and as Robin pointed out, there's still information that we need to gather from them. This is information that Melanie and Robin got in the webinar, and but there's a whole lot of other questions that we have, much less any questions that come out of this committee in terms of what we do going forward. But what you say in terms of the economic development position, how they might help in conjunction with staff that we already have within the planning department, Melanie, Robin, et cetera, in addition to filling that open position, yes, we will have staff to obviously carry this forward, certainly.
And it could be just geared towards communities that may not have ever had anybody dedicated to roles like this, either specifically in economic development or anybody in planning doing it. And
Right.
some of the small towns applying for this don't even have a committee dedicated to this and a staff member doing that committee work. So it's likely that we already meet the requirements as is, just with Steve, Robin, and Melanie, to be quite honest. I would be surprised if we didn't. Always good to check. Councilmember Clark.
I'm sorry, I'll just say one more thing, but Mr. Jackson is absolutely right. When we fill that position would be an integral part of this process, certainly.
I've got Councilmember Clark, and then I saw Councilmember Ottenberg, but Katie, your hand's still up. Do you want it back in line, or is it accidentally up? You're good? Okay. Just didn't want to miss you out the second time around. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Clark.
I love this discussion, and I love this idea. And Robin, your presentation was beautiful and very informative. I had a couple of questions about that general selection criteria as well. And one of them was the one we just talked about. And the other one is the community must commit to forming a public benefit, not for-profit corporation within 2 years. That bullet point would also be something, a clarification probably is needed for us to understand it. However, right now, well, before I say that, as well as that, I was really feeling positive about what you said regarding the plan and having a vision to start with. And from that vision, you said marketing, you had a number of things that came off of that. And just in what I think it was Mr. Cross said, that we need to define this first. We have to define what it is that purposes in this whole thing. And if we do that, then we'll have our key performance indicators that we can address each one of them methodically and fully, so that we have these goals in mind. We go forward and we work to those goals instead of just, well, we want to make it better and we want to make it beautiful and we want, so with those goals in mind, as well as maybe a tentative timeline, just all of the details so that we have a way to measure our progress. And without that, we can't keep up with the organization that is presenting this to us. They have a number of things that they are measuring: the jobs, the number of jobs, the investments, and all of those things that you listed. And so if we also keep up with some way, something we're focused on measuring, we can see the progress that we're making. And not just in numbers, but in our city is more than bringing in businesses and having more businesses and having more. It's about relationships, and building those relationships with our residents is even more important to me, that we include them in this whole program. And with all of that said, I know this is a for action, so I move that we go ahead and apply for the next upcoming grant cycle, beginning whenever that is, and with the Missouri Main Street Connection Community Empowerment Grant. I think I got that right. And with it focused on the original Route 66 segment, the proximal historical buildings, the proposed pocket park, and any other Route 66 structures or cultures that are in the vicinity. I think that's my motion.
Okay, so the motion has been made to proceed with a grant application with emphasis in the application as suggested by the department. And I'm going to just go ahead and state with the understanding that we would be matching $12,320 in the next 2 years in the motion as well, if that's okay with you. Okay, do we have a second for the motion? Made by Councilmember Jaxie. I know Councilmember Ottenberg was in line to speak. There is a motion on the floor. Would you be speaking on the motion?
But I, no.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, then we'll just proceed to a vote. So all those in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Oh, thank you. I am just so excited about this, and I think we're going to be pretty competitive, and we'll have to, oh, let's see. Feel free to share. Okay, if you have any questions, please. There is a document that Councilmember Garitano just posted. It looks like it would be a good resource for the Manchester Road Improvement Committee. So we'll take a look at that, and I'll open it up, and maybe that's something we can attach on the agenda, or I'll send out to the committee as well. And that's just a good reminder that we've established an improvement district before in that area as well. So we've done independent governing bodies as well. So now, Councilmember Ottenberg, do you have a comment on anything?
Just a couple of questions, but first of all, I don't want to be left out of the group of those who have all complimented Robin on the great presentation. So I'll say it once again, Robin, thank you for the presentation. Very informative. I just had a couple of general questions that probably all fall into the area of sales and marketing. And I was trying to recall, there were many pictures in Robin's presentation of various historic buildings along that Route 66 corridor. Are most of those buildings identified with some type of a historic marker or plaque out in front at this point in time? And the reason I ask that is if they're not, it seems like that would be something that would be beneficial to have those who are interested in history, those who are interested in Route 66, or those who are just curious about Wildwood in general, those markers tend to make people want to stop their car, get out of their car, take a look at the building, read about the history of the building, maybe see a picture of what the building looked like 40, 50, 60 years ago versus what it looks like now. The longer they stay in that corridor, the more likely they are at some point in time to say, hey, let's go ahead and have lunch somewhere in the area. Let's go visit a store. Another thing I was curious about is the roadside park. I wonder if the roadside park or someplace along that corridor might be an appropriate place to have some type of a, for lack of a better term, information kiosk regarding the city of Wildwood. I can see a businessman coming through, taking a look at this historic corridor and starting to think to himself, boy, I wonder what the tax base here is in Wildwood. I wonder what the workforce is like here. They're close to some major highways here in the St. Louis area. I'd like a little bit more information. Where can I easily get it? So those are just some, I guess, basically open questions I have, but we may not necessarily have answers for that at this point in time, but just food for thought. Thank you.
If I may, I'd love to respond to Mr. Ottenberg. All right. One, I don't believe we do have plaques in place right now for historic buildings, but as liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, which will be meeting this Thursday, I will certainly present your idea to them as part of our overall discussion also on this topic. And that's, I would like to promote a little bit that the Historic Preservation Commission has been very involved in our Route 66 corridor as well, and certainly will be very enthusiastic about this concept and would like to be a part. But also in terms of the roadside park, just to give you an idea of that timeline, we are going to begin working with our consultants on that park project starting in March and going into April, May, we'll start doing our initial visioning for that space. So I think that would be a great time to be a part of that discussion and inject your ideas around that as well.
Perfect, thank you. And I guess I'm thinking, you know, along with those historic plaques, a person who's not familiar with the area could have a tendency to drive through, see some of these older buildings and wonder why they're still there. Whereas if the plaque is there, it explains why we still have that building in the area. And the plaque may, or marker, historical marker, however we want to label it, could actually end up possibly, you know, drawing some potential customers to some of the businesses that are in some of those historic buildings. Thank you.
I saw Ms. Repito with her hand up and then she took it down. Are you okay? Or
Ms. Keefe covered everything that I was going to say. I would also throw in that we've had a lot of fun discussing this and potential promotion. And we also discussed potentially, you know, how the park has the storybook that goes along the trail, doing something like that. If we could find a Route 66 like story that went along and encourage the walkability of it, like promote the Newtown aspect of, you know, the Newtown approach that Wildwood does. It would just fit in perfectly and get people walking up and down those corridors, you know, create places, you know, for people to hang out. And so, yeah.
yeah, I would add that places to be are important. When I look at areas with historic downtowns like Maplewood, it's not just a place to shop, it's something to do, right? Historic Main Street, St. Charles, it's something to do. You can know about in addition to going in someplace. City Administrator Cross.
Let me go ahead and put that down. Thank you, Chair Edens. First of all, with regards to the work that Robin and Melanie did for this presentation, I have thanked them numerous times over last week and over the weekend that the three of us spent going through different iterations of the memorandum and so forth. But now I have the opportunity to publicly thank both of them for the work. And as I say, I saw, you know, behind the scenes in terms of what it took to pull it together. And, you know, we did go through a number of iterations. So they both did a fantastic job. And I publicly want to thank them. I also want to mention a couple things. First of all, the beauty that we have here in Wildwood is we have two folks that come from the outside. So we have Melanie from Manchester, and then Robin, who, as she noted earlier, was a planner down in St. Petersburg. And so she brings an unbelievable perspective, and you can just tell in her presentation about the things that they've done in other cities and what she's trying to help bring to Wildwood. So her vision, and I mean, it truly is a vision of what she sees Wildwood, is so refreshing and is so exciting. I mean, it like gives me goosebumps to think about what we can do when you think about some of those ideas that she has. And working with Melanie, those two work very well together. So I am very pleased with the committee having approved going forward with this, because I will tell you that when we heard the initial presentation, the three of us didn't think it was going anywhere. I will be very honest with you. I mean, it didn't seem like it was going to fit. However, the fact that they went, actually, they didn't have to go to Jeff City because it was during the storm. So it ended up being a webinar, which was kind of good. But after they were able to get into the details and find out what we really can do and what they can do for the city, I mean, it turned our opinions around tremendously and to what you just saw tonight. So I will make sure that we get legislation prepared at the appropriate time to go, this will need to go to council, of course, but there are some questions that we need to delve into with these folks in answering some of those, pretty important questions about really what the expectation is and so forth. So we'll dig into those and report back to the committee. But again, I'm very pleased that you all see the value of this and are going forward. And again, thanks to Melanie and Robin for pulling this together. Thank you.
Just to be clear, I am originally from this area, having graduated from Eureka High School.
Well, we'll own you then. We'll own you. We'll keep you. You were just touring other areas. You were corporate spying for us. We really.
That's right. I've done a around the world tour. I brought all that knowledge back to my hometown area.
Well, we appreciate it. So I've got Councilmember Galani and then Councilmember Ottenberg, and then we'll wrap it up and kind of move on.
Thank you. I just didn't want to be left out. I wanted to have an opportunity to tell Robin that you did a great job as well. And thank you for that presentation. And I agree with, not to beat a dead horse, but with everything else that's already been talked about here on the panel, as far as, to Katie's point earlier, there's a lot of areas that don't have that history or that character. Everything's been recreated from the ground up, and they might have character and that, but they just don't have that historic component to it. And when you do, I think it's important to take advantage of it and showcase it and make it to where people understand that it's there. Because there's probably a lot of people in Wildwood that don't even realize the level of history that they drive past every day and what's there. So, with my work, I travel to a lot of different communities in different parts of the country, and small communities like Wildwood that have history. And it's amazing to see some of the areas that have actually gone to great lengths to make sure that they preserve the character and the culture and the lifestyle of what was there before and incorporated it into what's there today, and really made a point of interest for people to come and check out. So I think it's great to do that. And I think this opportunity to at least explore it at the very least over the next 2 years to see what can be put together is a no-brainer. So.
Well put. Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Ottenberg.
So all I wanted to simply say was I complimented Robin on the presentation, but I would be remiss if I did not also thank Melanie for her contribution to this effort as well. Thank you.
We're a very happy committee tonight. I would just like to restate that to the staff. Thanks again for your hard work. And this is a great chance to piggyback, because some of the things that you brought up, Councilmember Ottenberg, how do people know about historic areas with markers? That's actually kind of a little bit of what we're going to touch on in the next item, which is, updating our EDC documents and website areas, which includes the tourism page. And so I would like to add at this moment, just so you know, I recently used it when I was scheduling some of the Lawn and Garden Summit organizations. We have one organization coming in from Columbia. So it was really great to have a link where I could send to somebody that was, not familiar with Town Center. here's everything you need to know. And if you want to plan a hike while you're here or a ski trip, feel free to do so. So that was really convenient. So the reason why this is on the agenda is because I'm really just looking for a motion tonight to do some updates. So as you know, on the tourism section, we've got that Visit Wildwood guide with things to do, entertainment, restaurants. But a lot has changed since we printed that, right? So we have some new additions like Botanica to the restaurants. We have some businesses that have closed and some new ones. So we need to update that. But as we were talking, it wouldn't hurt to also maybe recopy that business guide on the economic development page as well. On the economic development page, and so not the committee page, but just when you Google economic development or select that from the drop-down menu on the city website, we do have an area with business programs, but we've left out the bicycle benefits, bicycle and walking benefits. So that needs to be added as well. So there's just some small things we just want to tighten up on. There's an area with demographics on the economic development website page, and also for retail space. So some of that I think we could update without waiting for a new hire, because some of that information's available. So if anybody has any additions or would like to make the motion, that would be greatly appreciated. Councilmember Dodwell.
Before I make the motion, is it possible to enlist some of the assistance of this committee to go through pages and identify where updates might need to be made? Or are you expecting the city staff to make all of those changes and go through every page on the website?
I'm going to go ahead and answer that if you don't mind, Chair Edens.
Okay.
Because yes, Chair Edens did send me an email and noted some of these to look into, and more than happy to do that. But so if you all want to go through that, and if you have suggestions, please send me an email. That would be great, because I might miss something. So I certainly would welcome any and all input from you all in terms of things that need to change on that. Like I say, I've got a couple of these from the tourism page, and Chair Edens, I talked about Botanica and some of the other new businesses in town. But no, please help me with, if you've got suggestions, just send me an email and I'll make sure it gets done.
Could we get those to him by, let's say, end of business Friday?
Say what?
I
don't know if there's that big of a hurry.
I just wanted to make sure, you get very busy during a council meeting week, and this way you're getting emails during a non-council meeting week.
Well, I'll say just when you guys can get it, just get it to me, because there's a lot to go through. So like I say, I'll get it done as you all send me your comments, your input, and everything. Be very much appreciated. Thank you, Ms. Dodwell.
But I also want to go back to the question is, are you doing all these changes personally?
No.
Or are we sending them to our outside group that can do them? Because all of our current city staff, from what I'm hearing, has plenty to do besides learning how to go in and update things on a website. So if they can take suggestions, perhaps give some copy to whoever we have been engaging or would care to engage. I just feel like our city staff know how to run a city. I don't want you guys all sitting there going, okay, how do I move this graphic from here to here on a page?
We have the expertise in-house to do that. We do these things every day. And so we have the talent in-house, and we have the people who enjoy doing it and do have some time to get it done. So these are relatively simple changes. So yep, if you just give me the input, I'll make sure it gets done.
Thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to double check.
Well, no, thank you for your concern. I very much appreciate it. And if it was something big, like rewriting the entire website, that would be a different story. That's a discussion for another day. And we're heading that direction. But anyway, these changes can easily be done. But thank you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and good comments. My one thought would be to update anything that's on that tourism page or restaurant or business guide first, just because we are actively sending that out to people that are coming in for an event. So they might be looking at that with non-updated information. So that would be what I would do first. And then, second would be adding the walking and bicycle benefits. And then last would be updating that, demographic page and retail space page. Councilmember Ottenberg.
No, I'm sorry, I hadn't lowered my hand.
Okay, would you like to make a motion to that effect for updates, please? Anyone?
Me? Sure, I'll
Anybody?
do it.
Bueller. Made by Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Clark. All those in favor of updating our EDC documents, including our tourism page, economic development website page, and associated materials, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, well, thank you for that. That takes care of our 2 ready for action, and we'll try to be aware of time and quickly move through updates. So I'll handle the next update, which is just the Lawn and Garden Summit. We are rolling right along. I would just like to really thank staff and Mr. Cross for printing out the flyers, which I picked up today. And in my head, I heard Johnny Cash, I've been everywhere. So I've dropped them off at the YMCA, Far Greenhouse, Papillon, St. Louis Community College. Zix and Pasiglia's was already closed. I'll take care of that tomorrow. I ran by Parkside, Letty Lou's, Wildwood Pub and Grill today as well. And then I'll start picking up some other places to leave flyers, including libraries, Deerberg's notice board. We've got an email to the Botanical Gardens to kind of see how many flyers that they're looking for, and I'll follow up with All Red Bees. Since we had our council meeting, we have 2 additional updates. We got an additional food vendor. So if you are a fan of those mini European pancakes that are sold at the farmer's market, you can have some with Nutella if you come to this event. And then also there's a national organization that's a Federated Garden Clubs of America. And a local chapter here contacted us and will be presenting with a booth. And I wanted to give you some feedback from the YMCA. They were thrilled with all of their flyers, and they said that they've sent out emails to their community garden and to their patrons as well. And the feedback they're getting is that one of the big draws for this is actually the soil collection that Extension Services is doing. So that's nice to hear because that's a moneymaker for them, but a nice service that folks don't have to drive to. So that's pretty much my updates on the Lawn and Garden Summit, unless you got anything else from staff. Okay, Councilmember Dodwell?
I just wanted to see if you had a way of garnering a list of volunteers for assisting through that whole process. What kinds of volunteers you need. I think that's one of the things that we could be better at getting citizen volunteers for things. So I'm just trying to see if we need any.
Well, I can update you on a couple things, and then I have an idea if you guys would like to attend. There are a couple of organizations that are attending with maybe only 1 person or 2. So like a great example is Mo Prairie Foundation that's driving from Columbia. That volunteer for her organization is eventually going to need a bathroom break. She's going to want to get a cup of coffee and stand in a food line. And it would be really nice if a council member or staff's probably going to be busy, if one of us could, come up and relieve her and kind of man the fort for a little bit. And I expect that to be needed at some additional booths as well. So kind of really rotating around, asking organizations if they need a break would be really appropriate day of. I know City Administrator Cross has concerns about liability and setup. So, I'm willing to help set up to whatever extent is deemed appropriate by the city. Physically is what I mean, in terms of opening tents and whatnot. And then really the next way to volunteer is through the Watershed Erosion Task Force. So they are doing a stream table and are probably going to come up with some sort of rotation at that meeting tomorrow with whoever wants to be there for shifts. But the other thing that would help, since we're talking about killing birds with one stone, is if you do have folks concerned about watershed erosion, spreading the news that they can attend an invasive honeysuckle removal lecture and a lecture on planting native species would be very helpful as well. So in terms of volunteering, specific messaging to your trustees that are having problems like that would be very helpful as well. City Administrator Cross.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Ms. Dodwell, good suggestion, and a couple things. With regards to setup, I had a conversation just today with Mr. Vunich and Mr. Cruz in terms of where we are on tents and sandbags and so forth. So the setting up, we're fine. And again, there is a liability issue. I really have to be careful that council members don't get injured or something like that. So the setup part, the heavy lifting of, 50-pound sandbags and such, we got that, we have that taken care of. But as far as the other, there's lots of, I would think, there are opportunities just as you described. So what I'd ask, Chair, if you'd like, if the folks want to, send an email to me and I can summarize in terms of who wants to volunteer, and if you have some thoughts, or if you want them to just send it directly to you, but I can gather it and summarize for you if you'd like. But that would be, like you said, manning the tents or doing those kinds of things, but you don't have to worry about the setup. We've got all that covered. So I'll, if you'd like me to summarize or however you'd like to do it, just.
Either way is fine. If you want to email Mr. Cross and copy me, or just him, or just me, that's fine. We'll make sure we communicate. The other thing too is, because these businesses are doing lectures, it would be really nice if they would look out and see somebody from this committee in the audience. And so spreading yourselves out throughout the day would just be really nice for them to see an elected official, and especially if the business is in your ward. That would be really good too. And then, there's people manning booths that are from other areas of the city, right? So the Garden Club lady is from Ward 7, so that'd be a great opportunity to meet them and give them a bathroom break as well. So attendance is always helpful. Pointing people in the right direction is helpful. But I think that pretty much covers it. Are we ready to move on to North Point? Let's do this. Email Steve with your availability for day of. Okay. Ready to move on, Mr. Cross?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, North Point. So you all know what North Point development is, I think, but if not, it is a very large development that is being proposed to the city at North Etherton Road and Centaur Road. So there have been a number of discussions that have taken place up to this point. The concept side of it has been focused with the mayor, myself, and John Young. However, there's been a separate meeting of officials from Wildwood, from MoDOT, from North Point, from Chesterfield, to discuss the North Etherton itself in terms of traffic studies, et cetera, all the way from Centaur all the way to Highway 40. Quite honestly, and because it's a big development, a total of 9 buildings. One of the buildings, in fact, with the acquisition of an additional piece of property now that has been completed, would be 1 million square feet under roof, and there are no buildings around. So that puts you in a much different category to where that development, and this is an industrial development, so this is going to be an area that is going to have materials brought in and then taken out on full-size 18-wheelers going north on North Etherton Road, not south, not up the hill. But that means that they now can attract even Fortune 20 companies when you're talking 1 million square feet under roof. So there's been many discussions. They want public funding assistance. That gets into a whole nother area in terms of what the city can do. We don't have property taxes, and we don't have things necessarily that we can do, but we're in discussions. Some of you folks that have been around the city for a long period of time perhaps may recall that there is a city development finance group that was formed way back in 2006. There was an ordinance that was passed about how the city handles public assistance, public money for this kind of thing. That was updated in 2016. So there is a group that has been designated by council action to handle these types of things and to review these types of things. That committee That group consists of myself, the city administrator, the city attorney, the director of planning, the director of public works, and the economic development manager. That group then is responsible for reviewing these types of requests and so forth. And so that is what we're doing right now. So, and there's a document that provides all the requirements that an entity coming to the city is required to provide to the city to show benefit to the city and the residents, et cetera, et cetera. I forwarded that document to the representatives at North Point last week. They have that in hand. And they can be reviewing that concurrently with the documentation that was sent to them in mid-January with regards to rezoning. And so they're looking at that. So at this point, I'm waiting. I got a response from them at the end of last week saying they received the documentation on this application that they need to fund or they need to complete, et cetera. So they said they'd look at it over the weekend and get back to me. So I'm waiting for that. John Young has done research on one of the funding techniques, which is called a Chapter 100, which is something that the city may, we have to look at. There's certain things, but at the end of the day, the question is always, what is the benefit to the city? How does the city benefit from a development like this? Because it's not a retail, so there's no sales tax. There might be a business license, perhaps, but there's very little revenue to be derived by the city from this particular development. So it's something that we need to take into consideration. So we are proceeding very, very cautiously in the very, very, very early stages of conversations with this group. So nothing is definitive. They want to move forward right away. That's their style. They've done these. There's quite a few of them just around in the St. Louis area. But they are in areas that those municipalities have the ability to provide incentives. We unfortunately don't have that ability without getting very creative. And so those are the discussions that the mayor, the city attorney, and myself are having right now. So at this point, that's really about all that I can update you with, because it's still early and we really don't know where this is going to land. But I'll be happy to answer, questions that I can without getting into a whole lot of detail, because this is an open meeting. So
We appreciate your diligence. Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yeah, question for the city administrator. Do we have any indication or a rough estimate of how many jobs this development might bring into the area?
They're estimating it would bring perhaps 1,300 jobs to the area.
Okay.
That's an area, like, a development like that typically would bring this. And it depends over what period of time. They will build the 9 buildings as they get tenants. And so that could be over a period of time. Then you start analyzing, well, where those employees going to be coming from? Okay, where are they going to go to lunch? And so if you think about the area where this is being proposed, you kind of have to at least look and say, well, what is the direct benefit to Wildwood? Where are these folks coming from and going home? Okay. And they're right there by the valley. So those are things that the mayor has asked John Young and I to be very cognizant of and look into.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yep. No, organizations like this are used to going into areas that are trying to recruit, that they are desperate sometimes for increases in employment, and they do have money to give away. And so I think they're coming. It's hard to change the mentality of bargaining. Asking for something, a city coming back with a counteroffer, and then meeting in the middle. When you don't have anything to offer, you're already a better option on the plate anyway. And so that's going to be kind of hard to stress, but they picked us because of the area, because we're already affordable. So hopefully they'll remember that. And if there's no other questions, we'll go on. Okay. Update on business changes in Wildwood. I know for sure we have one with Craft Restaurant, and I'll let Mr. Kraus discuss that and any others.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we have some things that are going on that I'm happy about. So we have a company called the Exercise Coach. And Don Eisenberg is the owner of that. There are 3 other locations in town. I think there's one in Clayton, one in Town and Country, and I think one other one. And my understanding is this is a boutique exercise facility. It is going to be in the old Milk and Honey. So as you know, Milk and Honey moved out of one location and went, kind of behind their way. And so that Milk and Honey, so that's where he's talking about. He has received a permit stuff from St. Louis County. So he's moving forward with the interior renovations to turn this into an exercise facility. Right now, he's looking at a mid to end of April opening. So he's well on his way. We'll get the business license and all that sort of thing. But that's where we're at on that. I've been in touch with him a number of times to find out anything we can do as a city to help him. Thai Bistro, you all probably have read in one or more of my weekly reports that Thai Bistro, Joe, the owner, moved to Florida to take care of his aging father, as well as have a food truck. So he went down to warm weather. So he's probably laughing at us right now as we're going through these storms. But the new owners, I met them. I went by there, gave my business card. I don't even know how to pronounce their names, but Korkiat Watanapol or something close to that is the new owner. English is not their first language, and Thai is not my first, second, third, or 10th language. So but anyway, very nice people, and hopefully they will have the same kind of clientele. And because when Joe ran it, they had lots and lots of people going to Thai Bistro. It's a great food. So that's happening. Craft Eats and Drinks. The owners before they decided to move on to do something else. So a gentleman named William Green, Bill Green, initially reached out to Councilmember Dodwell. And so Joe Vunich and I have had 2 meetings with him, or 1 meeting with him, and multiple emails. He's going to make some changes. I mean, there's not a whole lot that needs to be done, but he does ultimately, if you visit Thai Bistro, I'm sorry, Craft Eats, if you go into Craft, you'll notice that the bar is off to the right, and then the eating area is to the left. Well, he wants to knock down that wall, separating those 2 areas and make a bigger area. So he's got some plans. He's going to refresh the menu a little bit. The one thing that we're working with him right now is he is looking to see if we can allow signage down at 100 and Manchester. Right now, city code precludes that. Okay, so he was told that but Joe and I are talking a way to see how we might be able to get that done through other means where there could be a community type sign or something. So we're going to try our very best to accommodate him within city code, but that's really what he's most interested. He just feels that maybe people don't know that there's a restaurant up there. And I certainly can appreciate where he's coming from. So we're working with him on that. Was it last week or the week before? I think the week before, Joe and I met with a lady reached out to me. Her name is April Baker. Well, as it turns out, that April Baker is the wife of Jeff Baker, who is on our Board of Public Safety. Jeff Baker has a business. It's a concrete finishing business, concrete finishing business. But what he wants to do is they want to open up a high-end whiskey and cigar lounge. Okay, I don't want to call it a bar, but they have this vision, and this is like a high-end. So I think that they want to go into the old Pure by Jen space. So that's about 2,100 square feet. They want to put in some very high-end finishes, wood finishes, some mood like dark kind of lighting, tables where people can sit and drink whiskey and smoke cigars. And they believe that there is the clientele. They would have maybe the max capacity would be like 47 patrons in their facility. But if you like that sort of thing, I told them that I would not I wouldn't be there because I don't do either one of those, but I will certainly help him to get open. But I don't drink whiskey and I don't smoke cigars. Anyway, it sounds like for those who like that, it might be a cool place if you go to have a nice dinner here in town and then want to go next door or something. So we're helping him with that. In terms, but there's a number of things that they need to do. So we talked to them that they need to talk to the person who owns the building in Tellica, and I had a conversation with the broker about that. So about smoke issues and getting rid of the smoke. So I've talked to them about that. That's not a problem. But we also, help them with what they need to do in terms of getting liquor licenses from St. Louis County, as well as Wildwood, and the timing of that sort of thing. And business licenses and making sure that, obviously they got to get an architect and submit, drawings to the city and those kinds of things, because this is all new to them. They've not opened a business in Wildwood. So we walked them through the process. So we'll see where that goes. And then I was approached. I've been working off and on with a broker who's trying to fill the old Jack in the Box space. And so he's throwing out a couple ideas, and some of them sound like they might have promised, but they didn't really go anywhere. The last one, which was maybe a month ago, he sent me an email and wanted to know if the city would approve having an adult toy store kind of there. And I said, that's a hard no. So that didn't go anywhere. So it's still on the market. So we shall see where that goes. And then I'm going to summarize in my weekly report. I talked to Colleen with regards to new business licenses that have been issued. So there's some. So for instance, Alta, the Phillips 66 changed hands, and it's now like Alta. You all know about Rockwood Eye Care, that there was we had a ribbon cutting ceremony that the mayor and Councilmember Garitano attended. But there's some other ones that I found out have obtained business licenses, and I need to find out. I want to find out. Micro Meadows, I think you all have heard about, that'll be opening soon. They're not quite there yet, but they're going to be opening. So it'll be, prepackaged greens that'll be opening soon, and a couple others. And I will report back to the committee when I get some more details about some of these others that have recently gotten business licenses. So, folks are moving out, other folks are moving in. The empty spaces like Milk and Honey, Pure by Jen, and so forth, they're getting filled up. I think things are looking good for the town center area for sure.
Considering it's, still a pandemic year, I think we're doing pretty great.
Oh, I agree.
I've got Councilmember Ottenberg and then Councilmember Dodwell.
So just a quick question, and this may have already taken place, but when businesses like Thai Bistro and Craft change ownership, do they have a grand reopening of sorts, or a new ribbon cutting ceremony or something of that sort, typically?
Councilmember Ottenberg, I have offered that to both parties.
Okay.
That we would be happy to do that. And so they both thought that sounded good. So,
Okay.
And they thought they'd think about it. So yes, we can certainly do that. And I think it's appropriate to do that. So I'll circle back with them and kind of see where they are. Thai Bistro, I need to talk to them anyway, because they don't have a liquor license, and they never had one when Joe ran it for a number of years. He kept telling Julian, he was friends with Julian. Julian probably had dinner there every night, just went and sat at the bar and had dinner. But I tell Julian, remind him that he needs to get his doggone liquor license or business license, and they never did. And the new owners are kind of following suit. So I need to actually stop in there and remind them about that. And then when we met with Bill Green from Kraft, we said, hey, if you want to do a ribbon cutting or a grand opening, just let us know and we'll do that. And he said, that sounds good. So I'll circle back with both of them.
I just saw it as a way to help them promote their new businesses.
For sure.
Thank you.
great thinking, and just so you know, too, Councilmember Ottenberg, when we've done the ribbon cuttings in the past, it's West St. Louis Chamber that usually sponsors the event and does the press and provides the ribbon and scissors, which is a great way for them to publicize that business and network it with other businesses that are beyond just the city of Wildwood. So it's a
Perfect.
bigger
Thank you.
opportunity as well.
It is. Oh, and if I may, Chair, if I may just add one other item to both of them. And in fact, I actually gave a sample of the new resident packet. So I spoke to Bill Green about that. And I got one from Ruth and gave it to him and said, this is what we give to the new residents, which has all these flyers and a whole lot of information. So I said, if you can, so he's going to go back to his marketing people and develop something that we then can put in our new resident packages. And that right now, that's ranging 75, 80, 90, but it's been higher in many months, as you all probably know. But and I offered that to Thai Bistro as well, but I think I'll go by and actually show them what that package is, because again, they were having trouble understanding me and vice versa. But that's another way to get the word out in terms of them putting flyers or marketing materials in that new resident packet as well.
Yep, and it'll be great because once they commit, we can update their information on that brochure as well, which goes in the new resident package. Councilmember Dodwell. You're good? Okay. I
didn't have anything.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I don't recall raising my hand.
I thought you gave me a wave earlier. I've got Councilmember Clark.
Yep. City Administrator Cross, is there, maybe there's already something like this, but I haven't seen it. And I don't want to add work, but is there a map that maybe shows all of the business venues that are in Wildwood? And then can we like color code markings on the ones that are full, the ones that are under consideration, and then the ones that are vacant, so that we could see where is it, just at a glance, where do we have the most happening and where is it that the people really want to be?
Well, Councilmember Clark, I am not aware if such a map exists. If it does, I don't know about it, but perhaps, and I would have to, talk to folks over in Melanie's area to see if something like that, could be developed in terms of which ones are filled. But I can also reach out to the folks that own the buildings or whatever to see, because obviously they're the ones that are marking it. It's not the city filling those businesses. That's why they hire brokers to do that, and that's their job each and every day, to go out and beat the bushes, because believe me, the owners of those buildings want the rent. And so if there's a storefront that is empty, they're on their brokers to get them filled, and that's their job. It's typically not the job of the city to do that. We don't negotiate rents or anything, but they may have some information, maybe not in a map form or a nice diagram, but we can get that information. And they're not that many, quite honestly. So we could get that information and perhaps put it in some kind of a visual format that might be helped to see. But but I'm not aware of anything. Councilmember Edens, Chair Edens, are you aware of anything like that?
The map that I'm aware of is when the businesses are historic. There was, at least a couple of years ago, one that pinpointed Big Chief, along with other areas like Pond, but not a map that had, Milk and Honey Heels and everything else on it that was really centralized in a plaza, or even other things that are maybe farther out, like in Ward 2. But we do have the list of things to do in shops and food and drink, which is, organized by street. So if you're in that street area, you would know where to find it. And I just added that as an attachment. That's one of the items that we need to update. Councilmember Dodwell?
We did have the threefold brochure that was put together that had the list of businesses on the back of it within the city of Wildwood, by restaurant, by health entities, by entertainment, things like that. Is that what you're speaking of, or have you
Yes.
even mentioned that?
Yeah, the visitor, there's a visitor guide as well with parks that had it, and that was the one that folded, and that is on our website, and I'll put that in the chat as well. And that one will need updated. But yeah, it was with the
Yeah.
trail guide, and it had some of the businesses
Okay.
on it. Okay, we've got Councilmember Clark, and then just trying to be mindful of time, we'll try to move on as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. What I was really asking about was more the locations that are vacant, and
Oh.
not necessarily the specific businesses that are there, just to see if we have like clumps of areas that businesses are not going into for some reason.
We do not have anything like that.
No, but one of the things that we do have though, and I think Robin kind of touched on it, in terms of some of the buildings that are empty, the Old Pond Inn and so forth. So I think that's really kind of part of that entire Route 66, revitalization that Robin talked about earlier. But I mean, if we looked at within Wildwood, I'm going to give my personal opinion, and Robin or Melanie or anybody else can correct me, but probably the main area in Wildwood that needs the most revitalization, that has empty buildings that have been there for a while, is along Manchester Road. Part of it east, now, like for instance, I may pronounce it wrong. It's either Imogene or Imogene's, and I'm not sure which, but I was approached by, and this goes back a few months, by a lady who wanted to open up a business similar to one she has in Clayton. So I am assuming that building is still empty. I'm not aware of anybody moving into that. But she was interested, but she was trying to get something else. She was changing her business model at the store in Clayton. But if you go from that point and then, well, even maybe a little bit east there, and then go west, particularly on the other side of 109, I think that corridor is probably the area that needs the most attention. And you all fortunately approved, the way to clean that up. But I think the rest of Wildwood is pretty good. We're going to take care of that Etherton area down there at Centaur for sure. And town center is doing pretty well. So I'm not sure other than that area. Now, if you all have a different thought, but that's my thinking.
You do have 1, 2, 3, about 5 storefronts where Schnucks is at that are empty.
That area has historically just been a mess, quite honestly.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing as much as they could to market it, but.
Oh, I've thought that for years, to be honest, and it has been years.
Ms. Keefe?
I just wanted to note that survey and data collection was one of the services that Main Street offered as part of that overall initiative. So that might be something we could put together with their help.
I think that would be good, because they might identify and collect some of the same complaints that we've heard tonight. So City Administrator Cross brought up the signage, and if there's kind of any flexibility there, we've heard that a lot from some of the businesses that are behind, like Imogene's, wanting to have some sort of sign on Manchester. So that was true when there was a coffee shop, because people didn't know that it was there. So maybe we need to look at a way to, add, even if it's a small sign on a stop sign with an arrow, just something for our businesses as well in terms of advertising.
What we can do, what we're looking at is right now per city code, businesses are precluded from putting signage on a road that's not where they're located. However, what Joe and I are looking at is having something where it's where you can have a group of people and then pointing restaurants or professional service or something like that. And that seems to fall within what we're allowed to do in the code. So that's what we're looking to do. Maybe at 100 and Manchester is having some kind of signage that is not just a specific, but entertainment this way, restaurants this way, that sort of thing.
I think
we can get that
very
done.
welcome. very welcome. From what I've heard over the years with those businesses that are, you know, one block behind that section of Old Manchester in terms of future planning, for sure would be welcome. And we heard that from Patterson Family Farms for years as well. So just trying to be really mindful of the time. We've had some great discussions and some updates. Steve, does that kind of conclude your update to businesses?
It does. And what I wanted to remind you is that you definitely wanted to talk about the St. Louis Green
Yes.
Business Challenge. So I didn't want that to get lost.
So what my goal is next month is to have a presenter and also rope in Michelle as well, because she's been instrumental in making sure that our city is identified as a green city with this program that also runs a business program. And so hopefully we will have someone present from the Missouri Botanic Gardens on how we can let our businesses know that there is a green challenge, how they can participate, how they can network with other businesses, advertise about small changes they're making, and how that fits into kind of the larger mission of the city. So we'll hopefully she's available and that you guys can be there for that. And then I will say as well, just in terms of updating guides, and we just did a discussion about businesses at that point of licensing, how we're learning about them, what their needs are there changes in ownership, staffing, etc. That's a great time for us to consider preparing a document with a checklist of all the things we want to make sure that we tell them about. You know, that's when we're getting licensing, that's when we ask, are you a veteran yourself, so we can give you a veteran-owned sticker? Do you employ veterans? Do you want to be part of that discount program? Do you know about the bicycle benefits? You know, in addition to please submit your documents, you know, for the new resident packages, because it's harder to backtrack and remember who we have and haven't contacted. So I think if we put together, you know, a checklist or something like that that points people into the right direction, we'll get ahead of it, and it'll be less work for Mr. Cross in the future to backtrack and make sure people know about things.
Steve,
I would welcome that checklist.
Steve, did Julian give you his checklist when he went and visited with each of the businesses, or did he not?
No, I'd have to, if that checklist exists, I'd have to go into his computer and try to find it, but no, I don't have that right now. But if it does exist, I can hopefully find it.
How about you let me look for it, because
well, you don't have access to his computer.
no, but I may have it still.
Oh, you may have a
from
hard copy.
previous
Oh,
conversations. And so let me look for it, and then I'll send that to you and
perfect.
Lauren. Okay.
That'd be great.
That would be excellent. Thank you. And I believe that pretty much about wraps it up. I do feel like there was something else that I forgot, but it can't have been that important then. So with that, oh yes, now I remember. Do we have an update on any of Councilmember Dodwell's questions about status, about where we're at for replacement? So this is under other business news and updates. Well,
I can say that I am talking, or have been talking to at least getting someone in. So it's a two-prong approach. There's a short-term approach and a long-term approach. So I'm focusing on the short-term approach right now, is to get someone in like on a part-time basis that can start doing some of these things that we feel are necessary to do. And so that's what I'm focused on right now. And I've had some conversation with folks, and I have one more to do. I got a name from someone here in the city that might be interested in that. So I want to get someone in, because I want them to kind of take a look at some of the stuff that we're doing to get a person. And these are people that are in the space, so they know what they're talking about. So I want to get another point of view, and also see if I can get some manpower. Like I say, this would be the short term right now, just to get some to update some of these things that we've been talking about from maps and those kinds of things. So, and then the longer term approach is you know, start looking, you know, for a permanent replacement to Julian.
Do we have any time frame on when we're going to get those items done? Because that's the same thing that you have been saying now for about 5 or 6 months. And I know there's lots of things going on in the city. But if we, and I don't discount the short-term approach. But if we don't get moving on something, then we're always going to be kicking that can down the road. I just don't understand why we can't form a small group out of this committee or out of whoever else, so that we can get moving on this.
Well, no, I don't have a time frame. As far as forming the committee, unfortunately, as you probably know, or I assume most of the council members know, you're really kind of precluded from going down that road per the city charter. That's a whole different ballgame, and we can have that discussion offline with John Young if that's not clear in terms of how we do hiring in the city. But be that as it may, with regards to time frame, I'm not sure.
So the way we did it the last time was inappropriate?
I think that would be a question for John Young.
Okay.
So John Young generated a consulting agreement that he sent to me in the last week or so that I would use for hiring this part-time person. So I would say that I could probably have a part-time person maybe on board within the next 60 days, perhaps. I'm pulling a number out of the air, because I don't know about people's availability and so forth. And I still have a conversation I need to have with a gentleman who was an economic development manager, then did city administrator work and is now retired. And that's a good resource I want to draw from. So I need to have that conversation, but I'd like to see if maybe I can have somebody who's here helping out on some of these things within, say, 60 days. The long-term one, I'm not sure, because I mean, that potential person could work out to be a full-time employee, but so this is an opportunity for them to see, what they think about Wildwood, as well as I have an opportunity to see how they work and what their knowledge is. So that's why I want to kind of put them on some of these projects and pick their brain a little bit too.
Just for procedure purposes and clarification, when we do consulting contracts, is this something like what we would do with, say, Public Works, where we have to list that publicly as a posting? Or does this not get listed publicly?
In my conversations with John Young, no, I simply needed to interview more than one person. I'll put it to you that way. But no, it doesn't need to be posted. But if I have documentation that I've had conversations with several people that I've done the due diligence, but in terms of getting recommendations or getting names or anything like that, no, his guidance to me is that that's not something that needed to be advertised, at least from that perspective. Now, when I go to hire a full-time person, that's a different story.
But certainly if you felt like you didn't get a good applicant pool for part-time, you would maybe look into that.
In terms of advertising?
Right. If you didn't have good candidates that you were comfortable with, rather than just hiring somebody to hire them because we're desperate for help, you would consider publicizing that then.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, this is just kind of a short-term thing to at least take a look at some people whose names by people that are associated with the city I trust their judgment, and they've given me some names. So I'm going to start with these three. I've already ruled out one kind of thinking about, and then I have this third one to talk to. But if nothing came out of that, then certainly, plus not only that, but I also have a list of names that Julian gave to me when he left of people that might have been interested in his position. He and I have since spoken, and some of those names have come off the list. And I've reached out and I've had other people tell me, hey, I know somebody, and I've pursued some of those, and they said, no, they want to stay put or whatever the case may be. But yes, advertising is always an option. But for right now, I want to get through at least these three people that I want to get somebody in who can help out in some of the immediate term items.
Okay. All right, well, please keep us updated, and
Certainly.
I will end on a positive story that Katie and I remember from a previous committee for simply for Robin, Melanie, and Steve, and that was a couple of years ago when we were looking at just first discussing the Route 66 roadside park. A former council member named Cheryl at committee had an excellent idea, which was to celebrate the grand opening of said park. Wouldn't it be fun to do a dog walk? And I said, yes, if it's called Get Your Licks on Route 66, and a t-shirt said so. And so I would like to float that as an idea, and we discussed, and I'm not kidding, we discussed an economic development because we do have several animal-related businesses. We have multiple vets in the area. We have Treats Unleashed. We have a lady that specializes in making bandanas. So we kind of have a cluster of animal-typed businesses, and at the time, Julian had a connection with Purina that was probably willing to sponsor or have dog-related agility events as well. So I'd like to put a pin in that and suggest that for a future event celebrating a park opening with economic development, and really
Yeah.
float that name out.
We'd put together a logo and everything.
We
so-
did, yeah. We were ready to go, and we ran out of money and time, and a lot of things changed in between then. And so we would love to work towards that in the future, perhaps. There'd be a great time to work in, charity adoption or anything else like that. Of course, people would have to register with their animals with vaccines and whatnot, but. Okay, so I think that about sums it up. So the next meeting is March 22nd, 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. And just to let you guys know, and especially Robin, since she's doing HPC tomorrow, I will be more than happy to hop on at the beginning, especially during public comments, and just speak on behalf of the Main Street Economic Development Initiative from our perspective as a committee, and answer any questions. So I'll be there to do that on Zoom. Okay? All right, do I have a motion to close? Made by Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Jaxie. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, you guys have a great night, and really appreciate the hard work that staff did.
Good night, everyone. Have a great week.
Watch the weather tomorrow and Thursday. Be careful.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Yeah.
Very much. Yep.
Good night.
You too.
Bye.